Most tattoo studios are chasing people who will never walk through their door. Followers from other countries, likes from people 400 miles away. Meanwhile, the person who lives 10 minutes from your studio is getting tattooed somewhere else because one studio in your area already owns the 5-mile radius. Let me show you what this usually looks like inside a tattoo studio. An inquiry comes in from Instagram. Hey, how much is this? One of your artists screenshots it, drops it in the studio group chat, and someone replies to it like 3 hours later. Then the customer disappears. That conversation never turns into a booking. Meanwhile, your artists are posting reels every day, trying to push reach, trying to get more followers, trying to grow the business. And the weird part, the followers are growing. You get more likes, more comments, more people watching the stories, but your diary still has gaps. Tuesday looks a bit quiet. Thursday afternoon's empty. So the studio goes into panic mode. You post more, you boost a post, run a giveaway, and everyone starts chasing attention. But here's the strange thing. Most studio owners never stop to question. The people liking your posts often don't live near your studio. They're in different cities, different countries. Sometimes they're in different continents. And they love your work, yeah, but they're never getting tattooed by you. And while all that attention's happening online, someone who lives 3 streets away from your studio walks into another shop instead. Not because their tattoos are better, and it's not because they're cheaper, not because that, but because in that person's mind, that studio is the local choice, the obvious choice, the place everyone nearby goes. And once a studio becomes that, they stop fighting for bookings because the people around them have already decided. Here's where most studios do get stuck. The entire industry has been trained to believe that attention equals bookings. So the default position now becomes post more reels, more time lapses, more healed photos, more content. And suddenly the studio owner isn't just running a studio anymore. They're running a content machine. Artists are filming tattoos, editing the videos, posting the stories. They're trying to keep the algorithm happy. But inside the studio, the diary still has gaps. I see this all the time. A studio with 12,000, 20,000 followers. Artists still posting last minute availability this week. And that's the sign that something isn't working, because if followers really filled diaries, those posts would not exist. The second problem is distance. Instagram doesn't care where someone lives. Your reel could reach someone in Spain or Canada or Australia, and they love the tattoo, so they hit like. Maybe they even comment, but they're never getting tattooed by you. So the studio ends up building an audience of people who can't really buy. And the strange part is, while all that global attention is happening, there are thousands of people living within 10 minutes of your studio. People who want tattoos, have the money, and are actively looking for an artist, but they're not thinking about your studio because in their mind, there's another shop locally that feels like the obvious place to go. And once a studio becomes that obvious choice in an area, something really interesting happens. They stop chasing attention, and the attention starts coming to them. Artists stay busy, the diaries fill earlier, and their studio becomes a place where people recommend, not because they went viral, but because locally they're everywhere. People hear about them, people see their work, and people know the name of their studio. And that's when a studio stops competing with the entire internet and starts dominating the 5 miles around their front door. Let's look at this a different way, okay? Imagine we open a map, and right in the center is your studio. Now draw a circle around it. 5 miles in every direction, a 5-mile radius. That small circle contains thousands of people. People who live there, work there, walk past your studio, drive past it on the way to work, get coffee down the road, scroll Instagram while sitting 10 minutes away from you. And inside that circle are people who already want tattoos, already have the money to spend. But most studios ignore this circle. Instead, they try to reach the whole planet. They celebrate followers in other countries, likes from people who will never visit. Meanwhile, the real opportunity is sitting inside that 5-mile circle around your front door. Because if a studio becomes the default tattoo shop inside that circle, something powerful happens. When somebody nearby decides they want a tattoo, there's only one studio that comes to mind first. And that's the moment a studio stops competing with the internet and starts owning its territory. And this is the shift most studio owners never make. They think the goal is global attention, more reach, more followers, more people seeing their work. But the studios that stay consistently busy aren't trying to be world famous. They're trying to become locally unavoidable, not globally known, locally dominant. Because the real goal isn't millions of followers. The real goal is something much simpler. When someone within 5 miles decides they want a tattoo, your studio is the first place they think of. And once that happens, bookings stop feeling random. The diary starts filling earlier. Artists stop scrambling for last-minute work because the studio has built something most shops never do. A local stronghold, a reputation that sits inside the neighborhood itself, not just inside an Instagram feed. And the studios that understand this install something I call the 5-mile fortress system. Now, it's a simple shift, but it completely changes how studios get booked. Instead of chasing attention across the internet, you start locking down the 5 miles around your studio, step by step, until getting tattooed somewhere else locally feels strange to clients. So look, the goal of this system is really simple. When someone within 5 miles decides they want a tattoo, your studio becomes the obvious place they think of first. And it's not because of luck, not because of a viral post, because the studio has installed local dominance systems. Most studios I've ever worked with genuinely skip this entirely. They keep focusing on global reach, but they never build local gravity. And without that, every booking feels like a fight. So let's break down the system. Step 1, local visibility beats global reach. Here's a strange problem that a lot of studios I've worked with have. Thousands of followers online, but people who live 5 minutes away don't even know the studio exists. And you see this all the time. A new customer walks in, they look around and they say, well, how long have you been here then? And the studio owner says, 6 years. 6 years. And someone living locally is just discovering you. That should tell you something important. The studio might be visible online, but it isn't visible locally. And this happens because Instagram spreads your work everywhere. But your studio actually needs attention from somewhere specific. Your town, your neighborhood, your 5-mile radius. When the studios start thinking this way, the question changes. Instead of asking, how do we reach more people? You start asking, how do we become unavoidable locally? And that means your studio name starts appearing places like local recommendations, Google search, neighborhood conversations, nearby businesses, not just tattoo pages on Facebook and Instagram. Because when somebody nearby decides they want a tattoo, the brain does something simple. It searches for the closest trusted option. Not the most viral artist, the most relevant studio. And when you win that, you don't need millions of followers. You just need to be the name that shows up first. Step 2, remove friction from local bookings. Here's another quiet killers of studio diaries. Friction. Not bad tattoos, not bad marketing, just too much effort to book. And it usually looks like this. A local customer finds your Facebook page. They like the work, so they send a message. Hey, how much for something like this? Now the conversation begins and questions go back and forth. You ask for reference photos, then sizing, then placement, then availability. Then maybe you book a consultation and the customer starts replying slowly. The artist replies between tattoos, so this conversation can drag on for a day, a couple of days, and then that customer disappears. And this is the important part. That person still wants a tattoo. They just found another studio where booking was easier. And this happens constantly. Trust me, I have worked with so many studios now that suffer from this. This happens especially with local customers because local customers obviously want something simple. Can I book in? And studios that dominate their area make booking fast and obvious, not complicated, not buried in DMs. Clear, structured, easy to commit to. Because the moment someone local decides they want a tattoo, you don't want a conversation. You want a booking path. And when that path is smooth, the studio wins the booking before the customer keeps searching. Let's test something really quickly, okay? Imagine someone sitting 10 minutes from your studio. They finally decided they want a tattoo, so they pull out the phone and they type 4 words into Google. Tattoo studios near me. Now, here is the important question. Does your studio show up, or does your competitor's studio? Because in that moment, the customer isn't scrolling Instagram. They're not hunting for viral artists. They're looking for the nearest trusted place to get tattooed. And the studios that dominate their 5-mile radius understand something most shops miss. That moment right there is where a huge number of tattoo decisions are actually made. Not on Reels, not on explore pages, but on a simple local search, which means if your studio isn't visible there, you're invisible to the people most likely to book with you. And those people, they're sitting inside the same 5-mile circle we talked about earlier. Step 3, become the default local choice. When someone nearby wants a tattoo, their brain does something simple. It looks for the safest, obvious option. Not the most famous, not the most viral, just the place that feels locally trusted. And you see this behavior everywhere. If someone moves to a new area and asks, where should I get tattooed? People rarely say, go follow this artist on Instagram with 200,000 followers. They say something like, oh, there's a studio just down the road. Everyone goes there. That is local dominance. It's when your studio name starts appearing in everyday conversation. Friends recommending you, barbers mentioning your name, people tagging you in local Facebook groups, customers bringing their friends and family back. Your studio becomes part of the neighborhood ecosystem, not just the Instagram algorithm. And once that happens, something interesting changes because people stop comparing studios online because locally, you're the trusted option. Step 4, build real local gravity. One studio owner I worked with in Greater Manchester had this exact issue. Great artists, great tattoos, strong Instagram page, but the diary kept dipping. The studio had followers from all over the place. I mean, we are talking Germany, the United States, different parts of the UK, Brazil, Argentina. But most of these people were never going to travel for a tattoo. So meanwhile, there were thousands of people living nearby. People walked past their studio every day. It was a street front studio. And these people had never heard of it. So instead of chasing more reach online, the studio focused on becoming impossible to miss locally. They started collaborating with nearby businesses, a barber down the road, a gym round the corner, a cafe everyone in the neighborhood had already visited. And their work started appearing in places locals already trusted. Customers started bringing their friends and local recommendations started happening naturally. Within a few months, something changed. Midweek bookings stopped dropping because now when someone nearby asked, where should I get a tattoo? The same studio name kept coming up, not because of viral posts, but because they had built local gravity. Step 5, protect the 5-mile territory. Now, once a studio becomes locally dominant, the goal changes. It's not about getting noticed. It's about staying the obvious choice. Because the moment another studio starts becoming more visible locally, your bookings can start to drift. And you will notice it slowly. Inquiries start to drop. Artists start posting availability this week. That's a usual sign another studio is starting to win that local attention. Studios that protect their 5-mile territory stay active inside their area. They keep their relationships with nearby businesses. They keep their name visible locally. They keep showing up in the places people nearby already look. Because once a studio locks down its local reputation, the internet stops being the main source of bookings. Your neighborhood becomes the marketing system. And when that happens, the diary stops depending on algorithms and it starts depending on community presence. Most studios are trying to win the internet, but the studios that stay busy are doing something much simpler. They're dominating the 5 miles around their studio. That is the 5-mile fortress system. Step 1, local visibility beats global reach. Step 2, remove friction from local bookings. Step 3, become the default choice locally. Step 4, build real local gravity. And step 5, protect your 5-mile territory. Do these 5 things well, and your studio stops chasing attention online because locally, people already know where to go. If your studio only fills when a post goes viral, you don't really own a studio. You own an Instagram dependency because the moment the algorithm stops pushing your work, the bookings will slow down. your diary will open up, and suddenly everyone in the studio is posting availability this week. But the studios that dominate their 5 mile radius do not live like that. Their bookings don't depend on a reel performing well. They depend on something far more stable: local reputation. When somebody nearby decides they want a tattoo, they already know the studio name, and when that happens, the algorithm stops controlling your diary and your neighborhood does. If you want help installing systems like this inside your studio, that's exactly what my Inconomics Tattoo Academy is for. It's not about marketing tricks, and it's definitely not about chasing followers. It's about installing systems that make a studio consistently busy. Things like smoother booking systems, inquiry handling, diary control, local visibility systems, the things most studios were never taught when they open. So if you want to turn your studio into the obvious choice inside your area, you can find out more about the Elite Tattoo Academy below and start building your 5 mile fortress.